Let's turn to the startling autobiography of Tony Groom over here, former Royal Navy mine clearance diver, now a commercial diver. The book is just titled Diver and is a startling look into a world which most of us know very little about, and we don't even think about in the context of wars, do we? It's true, Tony, isn't it? When we hear about the Falklands War, which you were heavily involved in, we don't really think of the divers who worked on unexploded bombs and went ahead to Bluff Cove. It's not much of it's an untold story, isn't it?
It's not mentioned at all anyway. And if you look in the official history, it's not mentioned. I don't know why that is, but it's not anywhere. It's not written. I got the 25-year anniversary papers. We weren't in there. If you buy the books, we're not in there. You read that, say, HMS Argonaut had two 1,000-pound bombs on one day, and then 5 days later they were gone. Nobody mentions who took them out or who made them safe and got rid of them. And I don't know why.
How many of you were out there, Navy divers?
There was only 18 in our team, but there was another team that had another 16 in.
It's a small specialist team.
Yeah. And I think that's why we were ignored and, disappeared.
You say in the book you had some doubts about writing it, and then you started talking to other divers, and everyone talked about their experiences, and you realised nobody else knew.
Well, I think you don't talk about things like that, and I don't think it's any conscious reason why. I think when you talk to other people that weren't there, that they may think you're overcooking it or you're beefing up your own part. So basically, unless you're talking to someone who went through it, you don't bother. But
you had kept diaries in the Falklands. Had you looked at them much in the years?
Never.
The 25 years between you'd not really.
No, I sent them to my mother when I was in Port Stanley, just after the day after the war ended. She read them, typed them, they gave them back to me. My wife read them, and I put them in the loft, and they stayed there. And I had never read them until the BBC turned up and said, "Would you consider reading them live on camera?" And I had to go looking for them first of all, and then I read them. And then when the cameraman was there, he and the producer said, "Have you ever thought of filling in the gaps, making a story out of it?" And I said, "Well, no, I don't think anyone would be interested." So I started that night, and I couldn't stop. I would be up at 6 in the morning, 2 in the morning, just writing away.
Well, let's fill in the gaps before first. You paint the beginnings. You paint the picture at the beginning of a little boy pretty obsessed with the sea, staring at the water and not thinking of, I must go on a ship across that water, as most little boys would, but wondering what was under it.
Yeah, my mum used to have nightmares. I mean, she used to take me swimming, and before I could swim, I would go to the top board, the Olympic height boards, jump off and swim to the edge underwater. If I ran out of breath on the edge, I would pop up and go back down and go to the edge, and she used to say, I know what he's going to do. I know what he's going to do.
As a picture, you paint of extraordinary tough training, because you were determined to be what the Navy calls a bubblehead.
Yeah.
Sounds rude, really, but it just means a helmet, I suppose. Terrible training. Shouts at all hours of the day and night of the command awkward.
Yeah.
Say what happened if someone shouted awkward.
Awkward is the Navy's terminology for we're being attacked by enemy divers, or somebody's putting limpets on our ship. So what it means, if you're a team of clearance divers, you have to be in the water within 15 minutes. So that's from being asleep, you get up, get dressed, prepare your gear, and be in and searching within 15 minutes.
And the gear is what they call a neck entry dry suit. So
it was when I was
which is
training,
like getting into a,
Yeah, the hole's about the size of your coffee cup, and you have to stretch it to get each other in, put your neck gear on, and then get the diving gear on, and be in the water and away.
There's a lovely description of Navy discipline I must read you back. Just when you're not diving or sleeping, you're running, eating, or being punished for something you might do in the future when they mightn't have time to punish you.
That's certainly how it felt. Yeah.
And also a lovely description, as I said, I wouldn't mention the blow-up doll more than once again.
That's twice now.
But the wild parties, because you felt you did not wish to live in Navy accommodation in those days.
No, it wasn't the best place to be.
Because people would go around in white gloves, sort of inspecting it for dust.
Every week you'd have the captain and one of his goons with his white gloves would run his hand along the top of the locker so it's not clean enough, and what you can have on the walls and that. So what all the divers would do was get flats out and join the student fraternity.
Flats of unimaginable squalor.
Yes, they weren't nice.
Yes.
Dank. Yeah.
Yes, well, there's a good description of those too. But anyway, let's move on to the Falklands. You say an interesting comment in passing that they got trained divers and then would train them as unexploded bomb defusing experts because it was much easier than vice versa, getting bomb experts and teaching them to dive.
Yeah.
So you went in for that specialist course and you got sent to the Falklands, the core of the book. You describe a certain sense of irony when you keep finding you're looking at these bombs with Made in Britain written on them and all the instructions in English.
Well, as a diver, I've done lots of bombs and mines and shells that have been dragged up in fishermen's nets or washed up on beaches, and people phone up and tell you that they found this stuff, like maybe a fisherman. But you don't, I think, expect to be sat alongside a green one, still painted with "Please handle with care" written on in English, because it's one of ours that we'd sold to Argentina. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not the sort of thing I was trained for. That's not what I thought I was going to be bumping into down there.
One thing I had not really, to my shame, understood before was that there were these situations where you had unexploded bombs which had fallen from planes hanging around on ships for days as the sailors had to go about their business. They're waiting to be made safe by one of you. And that's the part of the work you were doing, wasn't it? That there would be a bomb stuck in some bit of a battleship. And
the Argonaut had 2,000-pound bombs on it for about a week. One was defused, and the one we got at was in such a terrible state, we thought best not defuse it because the wires were hanging out. So, you'd think one would just say everyone off the ship, just get away from it. They lived on board. The crew lived on board throughout it. And whenever we go up to lunch, discussing what we're going to do with it next, there'd be all these people hovering around, listening to what we were saying, what was going to go on,
So it would be quite a long job, and you'd be
it took
stuck.
7 days.
And presumably this bomb might be in quite an awkward bit of the ship. I mean, it wouldn't be lying out in the open, would it?
It'd gone in the starboard side, right the way through the ship, completely through to the other side, hit the port side. If you imagine the energy forces involved there, it's gone all the way through a warship, hit the other side, split it, almost got out, and then landed in a magazine, it killed the 2 men that were down there, which was just below the waterline. And so we had to make patches, pump it out, cut holes through the deck above and into the ship's side, other side, and lift it in the same plane so that you weren't upsetting the fuse and it wasn't going to go off.
So you were working very close to a very, very big bomb.
Yeah.
There's a terrifying description of one which went off aboard HMS Antelope, and you were 200 metres away from it.
The Royal Engineers were doing that one because we were moving ships, so the Army took that one on. But what they did was try to take the fuse out, and obviously it didn't work. I think it was on the third attempt it went off. They presumably and others were killed. Luckily, they had got the crew to the bow and the stern of the Antelope, so there was only one guy looking at what they call a rocket wrench that was taking the fuse out. He was obviously killed. But we were about 200 metres away when it went off. But how did that feel to you when it went off? I mean, physically, you described the feeling. That was horrendous. I mean, shock isn't the word. Your hair moves, the innards of your body shake, and you can hear shrapnel coming through the air, hitting things around you. It was horrendous. After you've heard a big bomb like that go off, which must have been a first for you, really, and you then had to go back and get into these little narrow spaces with other big bombs. The next morning we were working on the Argonaut again, and what we'd seen was a picture of what will happen if it goes wrong. You were very young, weren't you? 23, yeah. I had my 23rd birthday on the way down there. Were you afraid, or did you have that invincibility that young men sometimes have? No, I wasn't afraid, I don't think. It was our job, and we just got on and did it. I think the guys who were on the ship were braver than us, who lived there for 7 days. We would leave it, for a few hours every day and go off and do something else, because we were working like 20-odd hours a day. Yes, you described yourself as gypsies of the task force. Yeah. You never quite knew where you were going to sleep, you just sort of dossed down and wherever you happened to be working and flop down. There's another terrifying description of looking for a mine on the Fort Austin, where you're feeling your way along all the dark. Well, it was, again, when we had a few hours sleep, we were all in bed and somebody came in, and that awkward came to play for real this time. Somebody came in, shouted awkward, and you just go into automatic. We got our gear ready, got into a boat within 15 minutes. We were away to Fort Austin, which was a huge RFA, Royal Fleet Auxiliary, full of fuel and ammunition and what have you. And they'd seen something in the water. And one of the engineers had heard a clank onto the hull. So they immediately think it's enemy divers, Argentinian divers. We did think they were out there. So we were in the water searching it. And one of the boys tugged on the line, and we were all on a line looking along our piece of hull, and he drags us over, shine a torch, and there's this round thing on the hull, and it looks new, and there's 4 beady eyes moving really slowly looking at it, and it's an anode, which is a zinc anode, which all ships have. So he got a slap round the back of the head, and we all just carried on. What would you have done if it had been a mine? I mean, would you take a chisel to it? How the hell do you get a mine? It depends what sort it is. I mean, some of the ones have got like a piston in, so as you push them onto the hull, that's it armed. If you take it off, the piston will fly back out and it goes off, so you can't take them off.
The whole thing
Yeah.
saw round.
Yeah.
Tell me about Bluff Cove, because that, again, was a strange job before the landing. And again, I'd never known this. Before the landing, their little team of divers, you were just sent off to check it, see if it was mined.
We had... it was about 2 days before the Sir Galahad and Sir Tristram went in. To make sure where they were going wasn't mined, they sent us in with the SBS to search the channel. And it was, I don't know, it was about midnight, I think. But the helicopter ride there was one of the most terrifying bit. We had the SAS special ops pilot take us in there, and that was some journey.
Flying incredibly low.
Yeah.
And so you went there, and in fact, it wasn't mined, was it?
No, it wasn't
okay,
mined.
Bluff Cove, but
one bank was in enemy hands, and they had us blacked up our faces, and we were swimming backwards and forwards to the enemy bank and back.
And you went ashore and slept in a pig pen then?
That's right, yeah, at Bluff Cove, yeah.
Obviously the Portsmouth flat had got you sort of fairly well acclimatised to the conditions in the pig pen.
That was quite nice in the pig pen, actually. It was quite cosy.
Warm?
Yeah, there was about 100...
there pigs in it?
No, there wasn't, no. There was about 100 troops in there. There were 2 para in there and us, So it was nice. It was quite cosy.
I slept in a pig pen with 2 para.
Yeah.
Groom.
On the Falklands. Not many people can say that.
There's a very touching moment, though, where the family, the local family there, sort of gave you steak sandwiches and were apologising to you.
Yeah, it was the next morning, and I wandered over to the farmhouse and I noticed he had his Union Jack up. This was the farmer. So I just sort of fell into a conversation with him, and he started to apologise to me for all the men we'd lost going over to there to save them. And I said, well, if this was me, if I was living somewhere far-flung, a little piece of England somewhere, I would hope someone would come and rescue me. And we all feel the same. Don't feel bad about it, But he was choked up about it. And I think it was seeing the Union Jack back up there, which had done him.
You modestly describe your book as the ramblings of an old fart who went on a short war, which didn't even have the decency to be called a war.
Yeah.
Falklands conflict. And you moved then on into commercial diving since. So what kind of jobs do you get asked to do now? What sort of things have you been doing lately?
I'd stopped commercial diving about 2 years ago, but there's a friend of mine who's got a scout protection company down here, and he asked me to do little bits for him. And only 2 weeks ago I was in the Queen's pond back at Buckingham Palace mending a water feature.
That's a peaceful sort of job.
Yeah.
But have you done any big ship stuff recently? Because of propellers and that kind of thing.
No, I haven't. No.
I mean, divers kind of have to stop, don't they? I mean, I think you worked out that you'd spent about 2.5 years of your life sitting in decompression chambers.
Yeah, 6.5 months actually underwater. That's only the saturation. That's not normal air diving and that. Yeah, so it's too long, isn't it?
Actually wet, but physically, I mean, you seem very well. But
yeah, I'm fine. I was.
Your ears all right? Because divers' ears go, don't they?
They do. Yeah. Their limbs go and the joints go. But I mean, the experienced guys out in the North Sea now are 50 plus, 55, because the North Sea people don't want a young lad out there who they have to explain every move to.
Yeah.
The safety aspect, if it would take too long.
And is the Queen's Water feature doing all right now?
It's fine now. It's fine now.
I just think what a lovely, peaceful job it is, sitting at the end of the mall.
I kept standing in the lake saluting towards the house.
Duke of Edinburgh didn't pop out to give you any advice.
No, he didn't.
Though.
No.
Oh, I think that's the most fitting end to a career of service to the nation. Anyway, the book is called Diver, and trust me, it's one for the stocking of the macho man in your life this year. Legs, Larry Smith. Do you feel your career's kind of paling into gentle insignificance?
Well, after that lot, I still can't get over the word awkward. It seems such a bizarre, random word. It might as well be trouser or omelette. Omelette, everybody overboard.
But you were rescued at sea once. You told us before the programme.
Yes, I recall that. Yeah, we just finished a